Hello, I'm Ashima Jain, a Managing Director in our national office. Today, I want to share some thoughts about lease accounting and specifically the interaction between build-to-suit and sale-leaseback guidance. We are starting to see an increase in leasing activity around build-to-suit arrangements. And when companies get involved in construction of an asset that they will lease once construction is complete, then under build-to-suit accounting rules, they may be deemed to be the owner of the asset under construction, even though they don't hold legal title to that asset. If that happens, the company would have to report an asset during the construction period and also record debt for the amounts that the landlord spent on the construction. While build-to-suit guidance is typically associated with new real estate construction, it applies to existing real estate as well. For example, if a company is moving into an existing building that was previously leased to other tenants, the landlord may expand or renovate to accommodate the new tenant. Now, this could be for the whole building, or a single floor, or even a portion of the floor. If the work is significant enough such that the space was not really functional when the lease was signed, because it was missing some key components that are being replaced or being put in, such as HVAC or bathrooms, the lessee would need to apply the build-to-suit rules to see if they were the deemed owner of the space under construction. And one must not forget that the build-to-suit guidance applies to non-real estate transactions too. So think about an airplane or a ship or some equipment or machinery being constructed. These are all situations where the lessee would have to evaluate involvement during construction under the build-to-suit rules. So now the question is, how do we assess if a transaction has failed build-to-suit or not? Well, the starting point is to focus on whether the lessee is assuming the risks during construction that are those of an owner. Given the wide variety of lease arrangements, those risks can vary, and so the standard contains both qualitative and quantitative criteria. Now, some qualitative criteria that may be issues often deal with the nature of costs to be incurred by the lessee, such as costs for structural items or what we call non-normal tenant improvements, and whether there are any constraints for the lessee to be reimbursed for such costs incurred. And this is irrespective of probability. So what that means is that if it could happen, even though it's unlikely, it needs to be factored into the analyses. Indemnity provisions are another area that could also be problematic. There are strict prohibitions around whom and for what a lessee can indemnify during the construction period. These provisions are very common in lease contracts, so be sure to understand and assess them. Now, if after assessing the criteria, a company is deemed to be the owner under a failed build-to-suit, the asset goes on the company's books along with the liability for the amounts that the landlord spent on the construction. The question then is, how do they come off? And that's where sale-leaseback comes in. The build-to-suit guidance specifically says that in case of a failed build-to-suit, the lessee must apply deemed sale-leaseback accounting once construction is complete. Now, sale-leaseback guidance is pretty prescriptive when real estate and certain types of equipment called integral equipment are involved. The three criteria to get sale-leaseback accounting are strict and onerous. And if you don't meet any one of the criteria, then what you get is called a failed sale-leaseback. This means that the debt and the asset remain on the company's books even after construction is complete, and that deemed ownership may extend to the ultimate end of the lease. The first criterion is that the lease must be a normal leaseback. So the question to ask here is whether there is any subleasing, and if yes, whether it is minor or not. If the sublease is more than minor, it indicates that the lease is not normal and would not meet this criterion. The second criterion involves looking to see if the lessor has made a substantive investment in acquiring the property. But this is usually not a problem in a build-to-suit situation due to the amounts funded by the landlord for the construction. The last criteria, and probably the most challenging one, relates to whether there is any prohibited form of continuing involvement. So think about providing non-recourse financing to the lessor. That's a prohibited form of continuing involvement, and it could be an issue especially in a failed build-to-suit situation. There are some other examples of prohibited forms of continuing involvement, such as repurchase options, property substitution rights, escrow requirements, or a lien on personal property, and so on. It doesn't really matter whether the rights or options are contingent or non-contingent. If they exist, they count. So think of this as a worst-case scenario model, irrespective of probability of occurrence. So the takeaway from all this is that it's really important to have knowledgeable persons involved early on in the process. Typically, the initial draft of a lease agreement will include various provisions, which may be considered normal and customary. But these provisions could trigger build-to-suit or impact sale-leaseback assessment. Early identification is critical because then it allows the company to understand the impact these provisions could have on the accounting. And the company can then be in a better position to negotiate these provisions with the landlord before it's too late. For more information on both build-to-suit and sale-leaseback guidance, please refer to cfodirect.com.